Welcome back to the South Endzone, everyone. I am Chad. You see Tyler over there. We have a lot to talk about. The college football playoff rankings are out, the first of 2023. And why not? This is a great time. It's a day of reckoning. But, I guess there's no better time than now because I have no idea why they're number one. But the Ohio State Buckeyes and South Endzone alum Jeremiah Campana is with us, and he is going to explain to us why on earth Ohio State deserves to be number one and why he's so happy that they're number one because it's not a target or anything like that.
Best team in the country. Good job, Jeremiah.
But before we do that, Jeremiah, there was a bet that was placed right before in the college football playoff last year. Since this is a college football playoff show, you and Tyler had a bet that whoever won, the other guy was going to have to put on the gear, in this case, the headgear of the opposing team, and sing their fight song. Are you ready?
Oh man, it's a very sad day here in Columbus, Ohio, that I have to do this.
There's not many words. You're good.
Yes, you guys do have probably the quickest fight song of any fight song in college football. I don't want to relive the past too much. I'm just saying you're lucky Marvin Harrison Jr. went out that game. Or because Ohio State's fight song has an awful lot of lyrics that you would have had to learn. But I'm ready. I've been warming up the vocal cords. I'm a man of my word. So if you got some music, some instrumental to pull up here, I'll sing right along with it.
I'm gonna say, Chad, did you pull up music
Tyler,
for this? Did you pull up? Oh, listen, we can
acapella. You want me to acapella this?
Do you have a kazoo, Tyler, that you could play for him while he's doing this?
Glory, glory. You want to sing glory, glory? We can sing glory, glory.
Unfortunately.
I hate this song, by the way. It's so annoying.
It's so easy, dude.
It's so annoying.
Seconds. Jeremiah.
It's so annoying to hear during a game.
Do you feel ready? Hold on. Let me see if I can.
We'll do this live, so you can hear it through my phone. That's gonna go to the speaker.
Okay.
Can you hear me? Okay.
I can.
Yes.
Let's see if it'll play. Or you might just have to. Go a cappella.
I have to go a cappella. I could do that if we need to. Glory to old Georgia. Glory, glory to old Georgia. Glory, glory to old Georgia. Georgia.
Hey, look, man. I'm just happy that y'all know how to spell. That's good.
You just say glory, glory to old Georgia a bunch of times and call it a day and keep it moving.
Yes, we have three verses to our fight song, so I hope we meet again. I really do.
Right.
I know. Listen, I was kind of.
Earbuds plugged back in here.
Yeah.
Are we good?
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I was like, Jeremiah still gets a break because there's not many words to that song. I actually have to learn words. And
listen, he made up for that. He made up for that with enthusiasm, though. I don't know that you would have come with as much energy singing the Ohio State.
I would have been
like, you would have been depressed as hell. Plus, we would have done it 8 months ago, like we were supposed to, or 10 months ago, or whatever.
Listen, I give him so much credit because I was like, you know what? It's so far out. If he does it, he does it. If he doesn't, he doesn't. Great. But he's a man of his word, and I respect that the most.
Yes.
Because you can't say that about many Ohio State people, These.
You have us confused with that state up north, my friend. We're not in other
on the whole show.
I'll keep it on the whole show, like I said I would.
Okay, fair enough.
And then
the number one team in the country. You wear that.
Yeah. So speaking of which, this came out last night officially. We have the college football playoff rankings, and we are awaiting. We have another Ohio State fan who we are awaiting on any moment he should show up. Our own Drew Sample. No, not the Cincinnati Bengals tight end, but another.
I can't believe you invited two of us
in Ohio. Like, I know, right? Look, man, we got to get the skinny. Like, why the hell are y'all number one?
Yeah.
What have you done to deserve this? State your case, gentlemen, because you have unseated the Georgia Bulldogs. And I'll say this, I think Tyler's pretty happy about this. But, there's nothing like the motivation that comes from not losing, but feeling like you lost.
Yeah, exactly. Oh yeah. I was like, you know what? Because for years before Kirby, it's like whenever you're the number one team in the country, things didn't go well. Jeremiah, I agree. It's a curse to be the number one team in the country. But we've won the number one team in the country moniker for the last, year and a half and some change since 2021.
It's an impressive streak.
Yes, but with that streak comes, like, oh, can we keep living up to this? Chad and I have talked about it before. I was like, there's players at the University of Georgia who don't know what it's like to lose a college football game. So how do you motivate guys like that? I think Kirby does a great job, even as being the number one team for this long, motivating, keeping us even keel, don't get too high, too low. But nothing is more motivating to a group of guys, who have been the number one team for so long, like saying, hey, you're still 8-0, but you're not number one anymore. Do something about it.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So I like it. I'm all for it.
I mean, Chad, I don't look here. Here's the case I'll make. First of all, I don't want to be number one. We are traditionally cursed at the number one spot. It's always been bad news for us. But I mean, look, it's the first college football ranking of the season. It's the least meaningful of all the weeks that they do the rankings.
Mm-hmm.
I think this shows that the preseason rankings, and I'll ask you guys after this what you think about, if they were to just start from scratch and not do any preseason rankings at all, because I think that affects this a lot.
Agree.
But if you look at the top 6 teams, I mean, all of them are really good teams, but nobody stands out. I don't think there's any elite team on this board that is far and away better than any other team in the top 6. So to put Ohio State at number 1, I mean, it's up their resume up until this point, which I think makes sense. They have 2 ranked wins that were pretty solid, even though the team's been up and down and all over the place. They didn't beat people by as badly as maybe they should have beat some people, but they acted accordingly. We've won all the games put in front of us. And say what you want about Penn State. It was a really good defense. But number 1, again, I don't know if I'm a fan of it. I think we're destined to be knocked out of that spot.
Have you seen worse quarterback play than you saw from Penn State?
Oh man,
that was pretty awful.
That was, yeah.
Because I mean, look, all due respect, your defense played very well, and their defense is good. But I mean, good grief, it was ugly.
No, and I want to say I feel bad for Penn State, but I don't, because their fans are some of the worst people on the planet. So
worse than people like Drew Sample.
Hey, my video here. It was
no, your video's good, man.
Yeah,
I mean,
it's great.
You look like you're the Unabomber.
That's my look, man. That's what I do.
Welcome, Drew Sample.
I call
not
him
the tight end
Ted
for the Bengals, but
I'm not that shitty tight end. Can I say bad words?
Yeah, well, I mean, just
poopy
keep it
tight
somewhat
end.
clean. Yeah, I mean, we don't market this to children, so it's okay. But just
let's be
don't say anything that would get us canceled by the YouTube Nazis.
I won't do that. I would just to jump in. I mean, for anybody that doesn't know, I have a podcast too. And something that we were talking about was Penn State just wasn't ready for the moment. Like, that was a pretty big moment for them to jump in and to jump off what Jeremiah was saying. Yeah, there's no team that's like a standout team right now. Like, the reason why they put Ohio State as number 1 is because they played 2 top 10 teams and won. Notre Dame looked pretty suspect after the Louisville loss, but then they seem to be putting it together. But it's like, okay, they just blew out Pittsburgh and some other teams, but it's like, still, like, how good are these teams? Like, Clemson is definitely not Clemson from a few years ago. Everybody's saying how crappy Alabama is, but they've only lost the 1 game to like a Texas team that, in my opinion, is pretty overrated.
I agree. But they're okay. Like, they've done some things to get better since then. And if you look at their wins, Ole Miss looks really good now. Texas A&M is not as bad as maybe their record looks. Although Tyler and I have a running joke. Us LSU fans anyway, we constantly call them Texas 8-4 because it is just the regression to the mean that is bound to happen. They will end up somewhere near 8-4, and that's about the best they can hope for. The best they can hope for is to ruin either Alabama's or LSU's season by getting a lucky upset win. But there's a lot of talent on that roster, and Jimbo Fisher is at the very least, he's a good coach, similar to Lane Kiffin, in that he will give a higher ranked team their best shot and do all kind of crazy shit to upset the apple cart and make it an interesting game.
He just doesn't get fired in the parking lot like
Right. Oh,
I mean, I don't know, man. I think it's like, so as a Big Ten fan and an Ohio State fan, like somebody that's been like going down there, like I'm going there later tonight and like kind of covering these practices and like paying extra attention this year, doing the new show and actually like being the UV guy for somebody that's like press credentialed.
Mhm.
I've been a pretty big critic of OSU all year, especially Jim Knowles, but now the defense is starting to come together. And now I feel like I'm becoming a Kyle McCord apologist because it's like he's not Justin Fields or CJ Stroud, but those two guys are both really good. And it's and Ohio State fans in general are so spoiled. Like Jeremiah and I grew up with like Michigan taking our soul at the end of every year when we thought we were going to be good. Oh, this is the year we're going to go to the Rose Bowl and we're going to contend to be number one in one of the polls. I'd
like to forget the 90s.
Yeah, but now it's like, okay, so this season, the thing that's most promising to me is Ohio State has a chip on their shoulder. And it's not like the past few years where everybody's saying how good we are. And I am actually dreading this number one ranking. And I'm going to see what the guys are saying when I go down there later. But the number one ranking is like, it's like a curse for the Buckeyes. Like we shouldn't be like, we play well when we're not supposed to be good. With the exception of the game, the national championship we stumbled into when we got smashed by LSU and we were like, none of us thought we were going to win. And then Beanie Wells just drove down the field. It's like, whoa, we might be in this game. And then no, LSU just turned it up. And like,
well, if you look at Ohio State historically, none of our championship teams were the best teams of maybe, you know what I mean?
We were supposed to get killed by Miami. Cardale Jones was our number 3 quarterback.
Mm-hmm.
And then like out of nowhere, we start winning. We have a pretty, I forget how the Michigan game even went that year. I just remember when we smashed Wisconsin in the Big Ten championship, it was like, oh, we might be a good team. And then we beat Alabama and it was like, well, that was the toughest game. So we're definitely going to beat Oregon. And we did.
Marcus Mariota or not,
Yep.
it was just,
Well, it's just one of those things that the Pac-12, everybody that's not the SEC is overrated. And as much as like Chad and I last year,
I'm definitely clipping that. That's for damn sure.
It's true because like as OSU fans, we can pretend like because we're the only team that's actually won a playoff that's not SEC. But it's like ultimately, it's like, you know, we can pretend like we're there as much. I mean, we are maybe money wise and the way the conference is run as a business, we're run just as good, if not better than the SEC. When it comes to actual teams performing, like, dude, like I would love to sit here and say, oh, we deserve to be number one. Oh, just wait till we play. Like, we're going to make it a great game. But hey, man, you know, like I thought we had that game. And then like, you know, as we all know, for some reason in the playoff, which it wasn't even that big of a deal for the Marvin Harrison hit from Georgia with the target that would have been called targeting. But Chad, you sent me that. What was that? The UCLA game where it was blatant helmet to helmet?
Oh, yeah.
No call.
Yeah.
And it's just been weird the way that they've been calling the game.
It's a random. It's like so many other things where it's a manipulation tool if they want. If you believe in that kind of stuff and you think that maybe some of this stuff is influenced in a certain way, I certainly have witnessed the great Satan Nick Saban benefit from this stuff where like we played Mississippi State a few years back when Nick Fitzgerald was their quarterback, and Devin White, who's a monster, comes up the middle on a blitz and like puts his hands up to go after the quarterback as he's coming in, and Fitzgerald gets rid of the ball, and as his hands are coming down, he misses the ball as he's going by. His fingertips like hit the bottom of his face mask. That's a targeting to the helmet hit. He misses the rest of that game and the first half against Alabama the next week. The same weekend, Alabama's playing because we had like our bye week. That same weekend, Alabama's playing Tennessee, and I don't remember who it was, but one of their stud linebackers comes up the middle and just drills the Tennessee quarterback under his chin, helmet to helmet,
helmet to face mask, which
helmet
is
to face mask,
concussion
knocks him
immediate.
unconscious,
Yeah.
gets him out of the game, no call.
Yeah, that
Yeah,
sounds about right.
It's like, bro, what the hell? Like,
And
come
I
on.
wonder too how much of it is refs in each division. I mean, like even then, like the first game
How
of the
they're feeling
season
that day.
for Indiana and OSU, it was like these refs aren't calling anything. And at first I was getting upset, and then most of the calls started going the Buckeyes' way, and I was just like, all right.
Yeah,
Just like,
because
you know
we
what?
were getting held all night in that, like when CJ Stroud scampers for that run at the end, and every
Yeah.
single Georgia lineman's being held.
Well, I mean, I think taking Marvin Harrison out of the game, you guys
Yeah.
definitely benefited with that blatant helmet to helmet.
I'm
And then-
convinced.
Making a play on the ball in the
Georgia
end
loses
zone. What
that
do you
game
want?
if he stays in.
I honestly though, like I'm not convinced because we didn't have any running backs. And like the thing is like this year it's been so weird because Ryan Day is coaching so differently. Because before it was just like Ryan Day, all he cared about was running up the score by 50. But then he loses to Michigan in another game that we shouldn't have lost, and we got embarrassed. We had a close game with Georgia where CJ Stroud finally played the way we wanted him to play all year. And it was and honestly, it got him drafted high. And I think like it sucked the way that it ended with the kicker missing it. But dude, you can't leave the game in the hands of the kicker. And ultimately, like I was just happy we had that second opportunity. I was happy we got to show like, hey, we barely lost to the best team in the country. And that was good for me, but like obviously, like you want to win it, but it's nice being there every year. But I think that much like Jeremiah was saying, I don't think we know how good teams are. I don't think there's any standout team. I think the LSU from with Joe Burrow definitely beats every good team by like 50 points this year. I think some of the better Georgia teams do. Georgia though, I don't know how good they are. We
don't even know.
They're definitely good. But I don't think they're as dominant as they've been, and we'll see.
What's crazy to me about that, though, is like you said that about the Burrow team. Like I actually think that's what's so frustrating as an LSU fan to watch this team play. Like they're getting better defensively, but the second half against Florida State, and then that stretch from like the second half against Arkansas through the first half against Missouri, the debacle against Ole Miss, like the defense. If LSU had a defense that was even like middle of the pack nationally, this offense is I'm telling you, like this is probably going to sound like sacrilege to a lot of people to say this, but it is as good or better than that LSU offense with Burrow and Jefferson and like Malik Neighbors, Brian Thomas. Those dudes are studs. And
Chad,
there's some other guys.
You spent a lot of time last year saying that this was your team this year. Like this is the year LSU was supposed to be the contender.
Well, he was talking a lot of crap at the end of the year, and then that Florida State game.
They won't let you.
Hey, look, and not for nothing. And I'll say this
Florida
about
State's good though.
That's a really good Florida State team. First of all,
yeah.
And second of all, like I really think that game was a perfect example. You saw it this past weekend, or 2 weekends ago, with Tennessee and Alabama. Tennessee's up 20-7. They're up by 13 points at halftime, but they should have been up by 3 or 4 touchdowns. But they shot themselves in the foot in the red zone a couple of times and failed to cash in. LSU did the same thing against Florida State in that first half. First possession, 2 plays down, knocked out at the goal line. And I blame it completely on the coaches on the play calling. You're 6 inches from the end zone, and every play is run out of the shotgun, and every play is either like a delayed handoff or a pass play. Like the first play right after that, after you get knocked out at the 1, should be line up, quarterback sneak, push him from behind and get him into the end zone. Just get that touchdown on the board. We come away with no points. We do it again later on. Then we have another possession later on in the game where we shoot ourselves in the foot. And then you have that awful defensive stretch in the second half where they gave up like 4 touchdowns in a row on consecutive possessions. But that game's completely different if LSU, instead of up 17-14 and a half, is up 27-14. It's a completely different game.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, it's just well, in our secondary, like we went through the transfer portal for a lot of guys. We haven't been bringing in the stud DBs. We had a a lot of guys that we lost either through the COVID year and like the transfer portal and everything. So it's that trying to patchwork that back end of the defense has made it to where I would have preferred that they just rip the Band-Aid off and go through 20 and 21 with like letting some freshmen start to build their way to being the guys of the future, instead of 3 consecutive years of going and finding like low grade transfers from these like low end Division 1 schools, instead of either go get the studs and pay the NIL money that you got to pay to get them, or build from the recruiting channels in high school.
I think a lot of this too, though, is like like this whole NIL thing is like how many people are following, how many schools are following the rules and how many aren't. And it's because NIL is supposed to be sponsorship. And like the biggest thing that's so annoying about it for me is Ohio State fans that are loudmouth on Twitter telling recruits not to come here because our NIL sucks and all this other stupid stuff. I mean, like, there's so much. I mean, like when you're an Ohio State fan, it's like it's so infuriating because like I love how annoying our fans are, but then I hate it all at the same time. Like it is so insane because it's really cool when you like are in some random part of the country and you have Ohio State gear on and somebody's like, "Oh, hey, you go IO," and they're like, "Hey, we're getting up from this bar and the place is fucking busy." They're like, "Just come over here and talk to us like you know us and then take our seats." And then you skip the line, and so that works out well. But when it comes to like actually like dealing with like
that happens.
Dealing with like because the Buckeye Nation is a real thing, but when it actually comes to like dealing with fans, like even like Joe Germain, it appears he has like 2 different fucking Twitter accounts. And one is that
he was the guy. He was one of the 2 quarterbacks back in the day when there was.
He's the one that he was the best '90s quarterback we had. He won the Rose Bowl, saving Stanley Jackson's butt. And then the next year we had one of the best teams, but we lost to Nick Saban in Michigan State. We ended up beating Michigan, and then we got embarrassed by Bobby Bowden and Florida State, like in the bowl game. I think it was the Sugar Bowl.
You know who didn't lose to Nick Saban when he was at Michigan State? LSU. we beat him like 45-27 or something like that in the Independence Bowl. That was my senior year. So shout out to 1996, boy.
The next year when they were really good, they beat Florida, but he took the job at LSU.
Yep.
And then embarrassed Oklahoma, and then he embarrassed himself at the Dolphins,
Miami. Yeah, and then of course, as is the case for Alabama fans, that just falls directly into their laps because they're lucky sacks of shit.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you really think about it, like what happens if Nick Saban is not available, or if he never leaves LSU, or if he fails at the Dolphins and then comes back to LSU.
Yeah, it's very interesting to think about that. And it's also, I remember one of the craziest 90s bowl games ever I think it was one of Tom Brady's games. It was Michigan, Alabama. It was this crazy good game. And then Alabama missed the extra point in overtime and it was game over.
Yeah.
And I don't know. Like because Alabama wasn't even really that good in the 90s. Like they weren't really like, it was Florida and Florida State. That was all the talk. Steve Spurrier. And then LSU started to get pretty good towards the end.
Well, Alabama was good at the beginning of the 90s, and then they fell off in the middle of the 90s into the 2000s. Were struggling, and that was, I mean, they even went through like the Sean Alexander years, and they were still terrible. And I remember Sean Alexander like trying to like prop up Mike Dubose. Like he was like, "That's my guy." And I was like, "Nobody cares. You're like 6-5. Shut up. You're great, but your coach is terrible." All right. So I don't want to go too far rehashing all that stuff. It's great conversation, and we'll have to have you guys back on to do this again. But I definitely want to get in, because the reason I wanted to talk to you guys, and Tyler and I both wanted to bring you guys on, is to talk about this this current college football playoff rankings. You got Ohio State number 1. Whoops, sorry about that. Ohio State number 1, Georgia, Michigan, Florida State, Washington. 5 undefeated teams. I don't know that we've had 5 undefeated teams that are like this legitimate in terms of like ability to actually contend and win the national championship. This in the playoff era, like I struggle to remember a time when it was like this. And then Oregon, Texas, Alabama, and even you get to Oklahoma, Ole Miss. It starts to lose a little luster as you get down to Penn State, Missouri, and Louisville. But like through Oklahoma, you probably have 9 legitimate playoff / national championship contenders. And then as you go a little deeper, you actually get into like,
I think LSU and Notre Dame are two of the best teams that are 2-loss teams.
Mm-hmm.
well, I mean, they're the 2 best 2-loss teams, and
They have the hardest schedules.
yeah, yes, absolutely. But what do you guys think? Is there room with this many undefeated teams and 1-loss teams nipping at your heels? Is this one of those years where like losing a game at the wrong time could actually knock you out?
Absolutely.
Because the way that these idiots do with these committees and the polls and everything, all it takes is Texas wins at the right time and it bounces a Michigan, an Ohio State, a Florida State, whoever might happen. Because I think Florida State is probably the most likely to go undefeated because they have the easiest path to an undefeated season. Ohio State and Michigan have to play each other. One of those teams is going to have a loss. Georgia is either going to be playing Alabama or LSU or maybe Ole Miss, who has a 1 loss in the one of those teams either have 1 or 2 losses in the SEC championship, and they still have Ole Miss on their regular season schedule. So they're less likely. Florida State seems like damn near a lock to go undefeated, and Washington's pretty close. So if you look at those two, the other 2 spots, you've got Ohio State, Georgia, Michigan, Texas, Alabama, and Oklahoma all fighting for those, and possibly even as you go a little deeper. You guys worried at all if you stub your toe against Michigan that you might not be able to climb back into it?
The loser of Ohio State, Michigan's not getting in this year. This is going to be one of those. This is going to be one of those rare years where 4 different conferences will be in there. I think.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. I was like, pretty much what they're saying is winner of Ohio State, Michigan gets to stay. And if it's telling us that like there's this many undefeated teams that even if we go all the way to the SEC championship and lose, we don't get the same grace. At least that's how I'm feeling that we did when we lost Alabama. You know what I mean?
2 years ago. Yeah, 2 years ago.
I think it's saying that like, okay, we're not number one, so we can't just drop you to 4. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, you're number 2.
I think
you might get bounced entirely.
I think Georgia's the only team that could stay at a 1-loss team and get in just because they're.
They might get 4 at the most.
Well, you're the defending 2-year national champion. You can't if they have 1 loss, they're the only team. Michigan has played 0 people. They don't play anybody until Penn State. Penn State is, James Franklin just doesn't beat Michigan and Ohio State. I don't think he's
never.
I don't think he's beat them ever. Maybe was he there for no, Paterno was there for the Fickle year, wasn't he? Or maybe
2016. Yes. I don't even think that Franklin was there when Penn State upset Ohio State at home. I don't think that was Franklin either.
Yeah,
was that Franklin?
No, Franklin's never won.
Yeah.
No, he's never beat a top. I don't think he's ever beat a top 10 team. I don't think. So Penn State was clearly they weren't ready for the big moment. That was actually kind of embarrassing. If you're,
dude, that was their shot. No offense, that was Penn State's shot to beat y'all. Plain and simple.
Oh,
and they lost that game for themselves. Like obviously Ohio State's great defense is fantastic, but like Penn State's defense was playing up to par with the Ohio State offense. But Penn State's defense, Penn State's offense literally went 0 for 12 on 3rd down conversions.
Yeah.
And that's what I was saying. It wasn't just like Ohio State's defense is good, and they got some pressure on the quarterback, but like there were even plays where there was no pressure on the quarterback, and he just completely misses receivers.
And he's supposed to be their guy. Like he was like
it was terrible.
They were like, oh, finally they're getting rid of Sean Clifford. They're finally getting rid of Sean Clifford. Drew Law is going to step in and finally do something, and then still here we are.
Well, the other thing with Penn State was like they had really good stats defensively, but one that was pretty interesting going into that game was every time a team had gotten in the red zone, and it was only 7 times previous to playing Ohio State, they got scored on. So I don't. To me, that was kind of an alarming stat. The nice thing was we were at home to play them. I think had that game gone in Happy Valley, it could have definitely been a different way. I mean, it was clearly the plan was get the ball to Marvin Harrison as much as we can and just play good defense, and it worked.
All you need when you got a guy like that.
Yeah,
he might be the best player in the country.
The thing for me is
I'd pick him the Heisman over Penix.
He definitely deserves it over Penix, but it's like when he gets targeted 15 times and the next guy is 4 or 3, it's kind of like I was happy that Kyle McCord threw 2 picks against Wisconsin versus Michigan. And like maybe it's like, hey guys, we really need to not. I mean, it's not like we don't have targets. I mean, but there was no. I just think there's like Ohio State is very frustrating on offense right now. And like Kyle McCord, actually, I think he's like 5th in completion. Like he's not even doing that bad of a job. He just doesn't look.
Well, he doesn't. He just needs to be average. He just needs to not suck.
Yeah.
You know who doesn't suck? The best quarterback in the country, leading the best offense in the country. And no, I'm not talking about Michael Penix or Washington, who went like 2 out of 3 weeks without scoring a touchdown. I'm talking about Jaden Daniels and the LSU offense. But I digress. If only we had a defense to match them, it would be great. I want to. So we talked about this a little bit, and this is kind of a cool tool that ESPN has. It's their. I'll give them their little advertising, whatever. It's the All-State Playoff Predictor. Who will make the playoff? So let's see. I went through this a little bit with Jeremiah before you came on, Drew. But so like Ohio State, if we click on them. All right, so let's just assume that they lose a game and it's to Michigan, right? Contrary to what you guys say, and this would mean they don't make the conference title game, right? Because Michigan would. Contrary to what you guys believe, the All-State Playoff Predictor says there's a 67% chance that the Buckeyes make the playoff.
Because of strength of schedule?
I mean, I guess. Well, I mean, it's it's assuming you win everything else out, and it's also, I think they're plugging in some probabilities on other teams losing, because I'm going to get into the schedule for this weekend, because there's some interesting stuff in this schedule this weekend where there are some potential stumbling blocks for some of the teams.
Can you run a scenario for Michigan if they get Harbaugh fired?
Well, that doesn't. That's not one of the.
without they
one of the metrics.
I feel like if
let's see just for comparison's sake. Let's see if they lose to Ohio State, they won't make it either.
No,
they're only a 46% chance. So yeah, strength of schedule does, I think, play the biggest role there, Drew, because the same scenarios in terms of like wins and losses, with other teams and other conferences is going to be at play there. What I do want to see though is like what happens if they finish with one loss. So if they finish with one loss, but that loss is to Penn State, okay, then they would make the title game, right? Because that would assume that their one loss means that they beat you guys head to head, right? So they go to the title game. Now they're a 95% chance of winning because beating you guys elevates them and actually knocks you guys down. So just something to ponder, to think about. Let's see if we do in Ohio State, they have one loss and it's not to Michigan. Who would it be to?
Rutgers, baby.
It would have to be this weekend. It would have to be this weekend. Let's say you lose to Rutgers and then you win the conference championship. 99%.
Wow.
You can lose to Rutgers and you have a better all right. I'm just gonna say this right now. Just this is my rant for college football. And this is why I'm so excited that next year we go to a 12-team playoff where this becomes more like the NFL, where it's more realistic and legitimate. What I just showed you is complete horseshit. To think that you guys lose to Rutgers and you have a 99% chance of making it to the national championship, to the playoff, but if you lose to Michigan, you only have a 67% chance of going to the playoff. Make that make sense.
It doesn't.
No, it doesn't at all.
But I think like the more exciting thing about a bigger playoff is some teams just get hot with 2 losses. And like even look at Notre Dame. Like Notre Dame played like 4 ranked teams in a row. They lost to the Buckeyes, beat a pretty good Duke team at home.
Got blown out by Louisville. And that
was at home, and Louisville's only lost 1 game, and I think Louisville might be better, but it's also the pressure of constant night games, constant that they're the only school that had 4 night games in a row, 4 ranked teams. Look at LSU. LSU plays Florida State night. It was a night game too, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was in Florida, or was it?
Yeah, that was in Orlando. That was in Orlando,
neutral site.
Neutral site, but it's it was more of a home game. Just like last year, we played them in New Orleans, so like it was one of those home and home kind of, but not really home.
Yeah. So, but there's so many teams in the SEC that are just good, and they're going to take losses because of who they play,
who they're playing. Yeah.
Yeah, and I just think with the super conferences coming, like. The Pac-10 to me is clearly the Pac-12, whatever they're called. They're going away. It's really not. I don't think they're really that good. I think that
I agree.
I mean, they're overrated. It's fancy offense. We love talking about Caleb Williams. We love talking about Michael Penix. We love talking about Oregon because they have cool Nike uniforms.
Yep.
And Utah.
No, but you see Michael Penix even, and he plays against a team that puts a little bit of pressure on him.
Mm-hmm.
And dude, it's not good. Like I'm not impressed.
No. And I just think that even Michigan has played, they have like the easiest schedule. But what sucks is for some reason, it seems like they have our number and it feels like the 90s again to a lot of the Buckeye Nation. So it's just like, well, it doesn't really matter how good we are because they've kicked our ass the last 2 years in a row, even though
I mean,
it could have been cheating because then it would make a lot of sense to be that dominant, get embarrassed by Georgia. Okay, that Georgia team was really good. Then the next year you lose to TCU, who, in my opinion, should have been Alabama.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, like they didn't do enough advanced scouting of TCU and Georgia.
No, you said
we called TCU.
You said no. We knew they were stealing signs.
Yeah,
we changed our signs up, and they didn't know what to do.
Yeah, TCU. They said like there's articles that say TCU knew about it ahead of time.
Yeah,
threw some dummy stuff at them. Also, there's the article also says they did try to scout Georgia, and it didn't matter.
No, Georgia was too good, man.
Yeah, I was at that game. That was a great time, man. I'll tell you what. That was and it was all maize and blue, and me and my family and our red and black, and it was awesome. And I
gotta say, like, how bad is it? Like, if you go through the process of like learning all the signs and spend all that time, all that energy, and then they change the signs, and it's not just that you don't know, it's that you think you know.
Yeah,
and you're wrong.
Yeah, and it's like going to that.
Can you imagine like somebody's watching another guy play poker from like watching his hole cards or whatever, and he's telling you he's got ace jack when he's actually got 2 8s, and then the flop comes down and it's 8 jack, and you're like, oh, I got this because I have pocket jacks. I got 3 of a kind. He's only got a pair, and you're like, no, dude, he just flopped 4 of a kind, and you just went all in, you idiot. Yep. Like that. It's. I think that's even funnier that they changed their signs on purpose. I would have been like, let's make it to where it's really convincing that they know, and it's just they're not going to know. Like it's we'll have the same formation, and we'll just have a different play call for this little card setup or whatever. That would really mess with their minds. But they only. I mean, it was a very close game, so I would venture a guess that Michigan kind of figured it out. Like, look, we have no idea what's going on. Let's scrap this right now. And,
why don't we actually just play football?
Right. Yeah. Like, stop being Astros fans.
I think the university knew about it personally. Like Michigan bailed on the OSU game in 2020 where they knew they were going to get embarrassed. And then out of nowhere, they come back. Harbaugh renegotiates his contract for a lot less money. And then they have it set up for him to, if he does well. But I just feel like Harbaugh is going to, whatever happens, because Wall Street Journal said that they took his, they took it off the table. It hasn't been confirmed, but I think whatever, Michigan had to know about it, and Harbaugh.
Well, who's buying that kid's tickets? Like he's not buying those tickets out of his pocket.
No, it had to go through the expense. Somebody knew about it.
Did you hear that the conspiracy theory nonsense that they said that this was like some take down Jim Harbaugh thing or something, that they were trying to take over
his own career down?
Like how would you factor that you're like, okay, here's what we're gonna do. We're going to ruin everything, and they're going to hire us. Like, what? Like, no, like it's the stupidest scheme. Like whoever made that little conspiracy theory up didn't really think it past like the second page. They're like, Oh, yeah, crap. I didn't think about the fact that, like, if they sabotage the whole program, that they're not going to be the number one team, the number one group of guys on the list to be hired. Like, what are you talking about?
Right. Well, and Harbaugh's been trying to get out of there for years now.
Mm.
This might just give him that opportunity to go
But
coach the Bears.
But there's
You think
also
he wants to coach
rumblings
the Bears?
that like if it's all falls back on him, that the NFL like might
Yeah.
keep him, like might lock him out.
Mhm.
Like not like they like the NFL started getting involved, or like not involved, but like they're saying like, hey, you can't run back to us because like listen to this, like a Harbaugh is always welcome in the NFL, right? In some capacity, but they're
Mhm.
almost saying like, hey, we're not your second choice if you get folded on coming down the line here.
Right.
I don't know. I think JJ McCarthy is playing well. I just don't think I think Michigan for some reason had OSU's number. Maybe they really were. I mean, definitely cheating against the Buckeyes, but
Mhm.
the Buckeyes still didn't play that good. And then the Buckeyes the last 2 seasons start out really strong and then just go on this steady decline. And that was something Ryan Day's been saying like all season is like we're trying to have our best football at the end of the season
Right.
versus like
Maybe he should spend more time like game planning and less time on that weird raccoon tan that he has on his eyes. That I don't know what he's doing, but he's
everybody
got like
And
mentions
calling
that he
out
looks like
loopholes.
he wears makeup is what
he does. He looks like
lady
he's got
said.
eye makeup on.
And then his flush
And
cheeks doesn't really help.
yeah, it's like he's got these real red cheeks, and then he's got like this, like he's wearing a raccoon mask, like a burglar mask or something like that. The rest of the time, so that it's like, but it's got bleach on it because it's like really white right there.
Yeah.
Like it's like it doesn't get any sun, but it's also he doesn't have like dark circles under his eyes, which is weird because that just tells me he's not watching enough game film. He's not staying up late enough at night, and he needs to get with the program. Maybe he's stealing signals, and he doesn't think he has to watch game film. He's got other people he's paying to go do it. No,
My
but so all
God,
right, so
you're playing in too many bad fake punts and
right,
down conversions in your
yeah, right.
territory.
It's yeah. Well, that's his alibi. It's like, well, look, I can't be this bad if I'm stealing signals. But what happens if is there a chance that Michigan gets like somehow like this thing turns really quickly because some of
They're
this stuff
trying to.
is accelerating really fast.
Every
they're-
day, something
is
They're
it
comes
trying
out.
to make it
possible-
happen like this season. Like
Yeah, is it
implications
possible
this
that they
season.
get that they get themselves DQ'd somehow? You know, like why
I
wouldn't you? If you don't do that, like you're telling people, like, look, do whatever you want to do. We're gonna wait until after the season, let you win a national championship, and then we'll punish the people who left and went to the NFL. Like what?
number
Like,
one, I don't think Michigan's good enough to win a national championship. I don't
I
think
don't
they're
either.
nearly as
Nope.
good. I mean, they've looked very dominant against every team they've played, but they're still not. They haven't played anybody.
Mhm.
I mean, they play Penn State and Ohio State. Clearly, Penn State isn't as good as everybody thought. But Penn State, much like Notre Dame, much like Ohio State, much like Michigan, any of those 4 teams are good and they're undefeated. They're going to put them in the top 10. And it's just even if they're not that good, they're gonna do that just because they buy tickets, the fans travel.
Mhm.
They want them to be there.
Yeah, they travel. My goodness.
No, like they're insane.
Oh, I know.
Michigan fans, like it was so nice when we beat them for 20 years because we didn't like have to hear how annoying they are. Like I forgot how annoying they are. To be
Oh
honest.
man,
Yeah.
yeah. Dude,
It's been like I was in an airport in Florida and some drunk guy's like, "Your team sucks." Blah blah blah. He's just getting drunk at the bar, just looking like an idiot.
Yeah,
That's how we felt about Texas A&M for a while because like when they joined the SEC, they didn't beat us for like the entire time, and then like 2019 or 2018, we have them beat, and they decide that Kellen Mond like knelt down and like was down so that we don't get the interception that seals the game. So then they go down, they score, they tie it. We go into overtime. We beat them like 3 times in overtime, but they reverse it every time. Like, no, that wasn't a fumble. He caught the ball, turned, took 3 steps, and then got hit and fumbled. It's an incomplete pass. And they eventually beat us in like 7 overtimes, like 72 to 70 or something. And so then after that, bro, you would have sworn they had owned us for like the entirety of our rivalry. Like, bro, y'all won 1 game in, I don't know, septuple overtime, and they had to give it to y'all like 6 times in a row. Like, shut the hell up. Like, and then we went back the next year and owned them. It was like 51-7, and we won the national championship. It was like, where are y'all at now? Come on now.
Well, and Michigan was pretending that they only cared about academics for those 20 years we were spanking them. Now all of a sudden they care about football again.
Right. Oh, we're good again?
I've
Academics and basketball. And,
Yeah.
and I've been like, how embarrassing is it that you guys beat Ohio State, then you get embarrassed in the playoff every year? And they're like, I don't care as long as we're beating Ohio State. And it's just like,
that's
how?
stupid. That's so stupid. Like,
Yeah,
I know that, like,
I've never understood that.
I know that, like, obviously, like, the Ohio State-Michigan rivalry is unlike any other, but that's still so stupid.
Listen,
Like,
listen.
You
I'll
don't
say
get
this.
a national championship trophy for beating Ohio State, or vice versa.
It takes the sting off though a little bit, but it still is not where you want to be aiming.
Yeah, your goals are not lofty enough if you're
Right.
going to beat one team every year.
I look. LSU beat Alabama in 2011, won the West Division, won the SEC, and then Alabama got another crack at us in the national championship. Now, does that count as us beating Alabama? Yeah, like we beat them, and then who walked away with the national championship? Them, because they got their little rematch. So like,
Didn't that happen to
shit doesn't
Georgia
matter.
too?
Yeah, we lost to Bama. We lost to Bama in 21 SEC championship, and they, I think we got the 4 because that was when we got to go play Michigan down in Miami, which I got to go to. And you said Michigan travels well. Like I said, it was like 75% maize and blue, and they were
silent.
Yeah, I was gonna say it was because we were on their half of the stadium,
like a golf match,
and it was all Michigan fans, and we just dominated them. I was like nervous, like going to that game. I was like, oh, it's like they're coming down. It's going to be a game, and then we just walked them out of the stadium.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. I if you ask me who would you want to play tomorrow between Ohio State and Michigan, I pick Michigan 10 times out of 10.
Well, let's see what happens if you get there. If you let's say you win out, but then lose the conference title game to LSU. You only have a 33% chance of making the playoff.
That's what the 2 spot does to us.
That doesn't
that's what they're trying to do to us.
That's retarded, though.
I don't see. I just don't see. I mean, like we might jump to the 1 when we beat Michigan. I don't want to say if we're going to do it. I got $50 on it with another OSU fan who says that Ryan Day is a terrible coach. With its
all right, so hear me out, because this is, again, I'm going to make the argument for how this is so stupid. So if Georgia wins out and then loses the SEC championship game, now mind you, this means that they will have lost the SEC championship to either an Ole Miss team that they just beat because they have to play them before this.
We play them in 2 weeks.
That's unlikely because Ole Miss, if Georgia beats them, Ole Miss is very unlikely to be in the SEC championship. Because they'll be in a tiebreaker with LSU and Alabama. And if LSU beats Alabama and wins out, LSU is going to be in the title game. If Alabama beats LSU, it's a virtual lock that Alabama is going to be there anyway because they already have the head-to-head against Ole Miss. So most likely what this scenario involves is Georgia losing to an LSU team that has arguably, but I think it is the best offense. I mean, it's the best scoring offense and the best total yardage offense in the country. Number 1 ranked in both of those categories. And then that, or they play against Alabama, it's Alabama. And say what you want to say about Jalen Milroe, who's been played a lot better lately. Their defense is elite. It's your standard Alabama situation minus the elite quarterback play, but they have a decent quarterback. So that's the scenario. 33% chance of them making the playoff if they lose an SEC title game to either a 2-loss LSU or a 1-loss Alabama. All right, now
they're making it in.
Now listen. Well, wait. Listen. If they lose to Ole Miss, and then, or let's say they lose to Tennessee at Tennessee, okay, which is their gross. Wait. So this is saying that you're 66% chance to beat Tennessee. Percentage chance Georgia wins. Yeah, so Missouri is the one you arguably, according to this, have the best chance of beating, right? And you win the title game. Now you're a 77.
That makes no sense.
How if you lose to Missouri?
That makes no sense.
ESPN's pretty stupid, though.
That's stupid because if we lose to Missouri, they're going to Atlanta.
I'm telling you, this thing is accurate, though, Drew. I know you think it's ESPN is crazy, but like, this is accurate. This is how this stuff. We've all seen it.
So the
our
question
whole lives
is, the 12-team playoff. Then, how much human influence is going to be in that? Are we still going to have gripes with the 12-team playoff?
Make it 64.
But here's the thing, though. Jeremiah, is I just like with the NCAA tournament, do we really ever fight over who isn't really getting a chance at the national championship? No.
No.
It's more about like who's going to lose in the first or second round
Right.
and isn't getting a chance to be on the stage. I want it to be like that. That's how it should be.
I
Be
do
that
too.
that the debates are about these fringe teams, and everybody who belongs in the national championship conversation is automatically in. And the rest of it is just, here's some people who they probably aren't going to win it, but they should be given this little platform to maybe knock somebody off or whatever.
Did they talk about what those parameters are going to be? Is it going to be the same situation where it's just like a group of people
it's
in a
basically going to
boardroom?
be the same it's going to be the same format here that we have here, where but what I'll say is, so where I like that, again, remember what we're talking about here. So in a 12-team playoff, all of these teams make it, plus all of these teams here. Okay, the ones where we're going to be having some debate is going to be, Ole Miss, because they've still got to play Georgia. Penn State still has to play Michigan. Missouri still has to play Georgia, and I think Florida. They have to play somebody else in the East who's good. You got LSU, Louisville, Notre Dame. So next year it's going to be these types of teams. From that Ole Miss, maybe even Oklahoma, but all the way down to, you get into like Tennessee, Utah, UCLA, USC could be even possibly, Kansas with their win over Oklahoma is in the conversation where they could move up if they stay undefeated the rest of the way. Those, but what you're talking about then is that's the, 9 through 12 teams who they're playing their way into the next round. You're going to have 4 first-round buys for the top 4 seeds. Now, you may have some arguments about, so-and-so deserves the number 4 seed,
right,
and this team should be the number 5 or 6, and they're getting a free pass because they're getting a buy. It doesn't matter. You still, if you're that good, go out and prove it, and you get to win and prove it on the field. What sucks about the current system, and even worse about the system before, was back before there was even a BCS, it was just like whatever the polls said. It didn't matter what you did on the field. Like, if they decided that they wanted you to be number 1, you were number 1. LSU got a great taste of that when they won the 2003 BCS championship. The little crystal ball that goes on tour all over the country, that's the national championship trophy. LSU has that in their trophy cabinet. What USC has is some people voted for us because they're all West Coast lackeys, and they gave us a fake trophy. That's the trophy they have in their locker, not the one that everybody recognized as the national championship trophy the whole season before that, but then they still get to claim that they're national champions. Well, then you go into the BCS era, and it's still like, what if number 4, 5, 6 actually has a legitimate gripe?
right.
We saw it with like the Fiesta Bowl where Boise State beat Oklahoma. You've seen it with some other, UCF with their little parade that they threw for themselves. And I get it. Like, everybody can clown them for all the right reasons because they didn't really play enough teams to get there. But my argument is, but you didn't give them a chance to, like, in a 12-team playoff, they're in there as like the 10 or 11. And then if they go win 3-4 games, what are you going to tell them?
Right.
Like, you have to throw them a parade because they did it, But this idea that you can argue someone out of the post, like, you don't even get to be in the conversation. You don't get to prove it on the field. It's completely different.
Yep.
So that's where I think I don't think we're going to have those same gripes, Jeremiah, next year, where you'll have a different breed of gripes. It'll be about what 12 doesn't deserve to be there and what 17 got screwed because they should be in there. But we're all going to look at it and we're going to be like, yeah, bro, maybe you shouldn't have lost 3 games.
Right. The drop off after spot 9.
This is having somebody undefeated not get in.
Yeah,
exactly. That's ridiculous. So
yeah, I'm on the same page. It's interesting. My buddy Andy, who I do our show with, who's like, he's the guy that has the credentials. He is like the opposite traditionalist, wishes it was still we just played the Pac-10 champion and all that other nonsense. But it was like, that whole archaic bowl system was so stupid, and it was the only like the top tier Division I college football did that in the NCAA. On a side note with the Michigan thing, the other thing that's interesting to me is how much of NCAA can actually govern what's going to be going on in college football. Like college football is getting so big that it seems like it's going to be branching out of the NCAA, especially with NIL, especially with just how much money's in it. I mean, like every primetime game, I mean, every channel seems to have a primetime game on local TV now. So I mean, I'm a big college football fan, so I like more games. I think there's a lot of years where Ohio State would start to hit their stride, and they had 2 losses, or they'd missed the playoff, and it was like, man, I wonder how they would have played, because now they seem to have gotten their head out of their ass. And I think you could say the same thing about a lot of SEC teams. Any other conference, I don't really think so. I think like when the SEC dominates as long as they have, I think if anybody, it helps them the most, because there's so many, like you have to play so many good teams, even if you have a down year. Like I remember I was talking crap to Chad, all bowl, like the whole bowl teams are playing. And it was purely me just talking crap. Like, look at that 5-0, Chad.
I was gonna say.
And he's like, we're going to see what really happens when the good teams start playing each other.
Yeah.
Well, yeah. So the thing about that,
no.
Yeah, well, the thing about that is, like, if you look at the way that the whole system breaks down, like if you end up with 2 SEC teams in the playoff, right? All right, so there's 2. Then, like, you have these tie-ins to some of these bigger bowls, the Sugar Bowl and the Capital One Bowl and things like that. So now you start getting into, okay, so it's SEC number 3 against a conference champion from some other conference. Then it's SEC number 4 against another conference champion. Then it's SEC number 5 against another conference champion. And then by the time you get to SEC 6 through 8, you're finally playing like the second and third best teams in some of these other conferences. And so it's like, look at that. We beat, like, your conference champion beat Vanderbilt. Congratulations. Like, I hope you're happy with yourself.
Nobody cares.
Oh, good. You beat Mississippi State. Congrats. I hope you're happy with yourself. Like, but then we get to the playoffs and it's like, okay, all right. So who's holding that trophy at the end? Oh, wait, that's right. It's another SEC team. Okay. Well, come back again next year. Maybe y'all can. And I get that, like, when you get to the elite teams in the different conferences, Clemson and Florida State this year
used to be Clemson.
It used to be Clemson, but Clemson, like, legit, like they went toe to toe with Alabama. They're the only team, I think, that outside of Kirby Smart that beat Alabama twice in like championship level stuff.
They're the only school outside of the SEC besides Ohio State that's won a playoff, right?
Exactly. Yeah, no, they are. They're the only. So in the college football playoff era, Ohio State and Clemson are the only 2 teams. Right. Also, nobody cares about the SEC bowl record, except for the other conferences.
Yeah,
like I'm actually rooting for Oklahoma to beat Alabama when they're playing them, because screw Alabama. Like I don't want. I'm not rooting for them.
You guys beat Alabama's 3rd string quarterback. How dare you?
And it's
the only exception to that was I did root for Auburn to beat Florida State because I hate Jimbo Fisher. That was like legit.
That was a great game, that national championship. That was crazy because
I also was rooting for Auburn to beat Florida State that year because Auburn had 1 loss that year. You know who their 1 loss was?
LSU.
That's right. That's right. We were up 21-0 at halftime, and we beat them by 2 touchdowns. It was that was a really good Auburn team. Trey Mason and Nick Marshall and I can't remember. Did they have Nick Fairley?
Nick Fairley was. Nick Marshall wasn't that long ago.
Yeah, he was.
Oh, good Lord. Okay.
Yep.
My time gets all jacked up.
Yeah. So
I always like talking to you SEC fans, because whenever like we're talking to Michigan fans, it's usually I'm hearing criticism of the Buckeyes from fellow Buckeye fans who are the most annoying, and then second it's Michigan fans who are second most annoying. And I talk to an SEC fan and they talk shit, and I want to talk shit back, and then I look at what you say, I'm like, well, You're not wrong.
Hard to argue against.
The only thing that you were like, let's see when they play a team that could score points. I'm like, well, Notre Dame can score points.
I mean, yeah,
But
if you
still-
against Pitt. But you look at some of their other games though, like they were struggling a little bit there.
Well, since they've lost to
They
Louisville,
didn't score a lot against Louisville.
Yeah.
they played against Clemson this weekend, but even then, that Clemson team, that was a close game they had with Florida State, but they're still not that great of a team.
No.
And screw that Dabo, whatever loser. I mean, I don't like that dude.
I'm not gonna sit here and argue like we've had the most exciting schedule this year. Like,
But you're a two-time national champion.
Yes, to be fair, we were also supposed like Ball State was an emergency schedule because we were supposed to play Oklahoma.
And
we had a home and home with Oklahoma set up for a long time, but because next year it's going to be a it's like Oklahoma's going to be in the SEC, it would screw the home and home non-conference thing. So we had to emergency
regardless of the schedule.
Yeah, the SEC
regardless
did that
of the schedule.
Not by the way, just so everybody knows, the SEC did that.
So it should not be a clean slate every year. The defending champions should get the benefit of the doubt, regardless.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know, like
you can't. I mean, especially in the playoff era, to win 2 years in a row is really impressive, and they've been there a lot more. And I just think it's like
give me more credit than I'm giving me.
Well, I'm just saying, like it's weird because when you do talk to like a non-SEC fan who like I hate the SEC, but like I'll talk to Chad and I'll be like, yeah, man, it's hard to like it's hard to argue against the SEC's greatness, and it like because when you're that dominant for 20 plus years, you can't really like. There's not much to say. Like, we are happy to finally be on the same level as the SEC. I think that's what Buckeye fans are happy about, because so many times we think we'd have a good team and we go and get embarrassed, and it was so painful. I mean, like, I mean, you can ask Chad when we were going to play. Like, I wanted to play Clemson more than any other team because they beat us twice and embarrassed us the last time we played them.
Yep.
And we still lost to them, and then we kicked their butt the next year. But still,
and I don't care what anybody says.
Yeah, I would love to play
that win against Arkansas. That win against Arkansas that got taken away from Jim Tressel. That was a win. I don't care.
Yeah, I mean,
that year, Drew. I remember you telling me like you're like, yeah, y'all, we want y'all to sun Clemson or something, and like you, because we thought it was going to break down a little differently, and it ended up being we played Oklahoma and you guys played Clemson, and so we didn't get to meet up.
We wanted to meet up. That was going to be fun. Like,
yeah, that was going to be fun.
Play the Buckeyes, and then.
But
man, the Buckeyes fizzled out. We didn't get it. There were some calls that definitely didn't go our way, but we still should have won that game. I mean, it's just like with Georgia.
That was Justin Fields, right?
Yeah, that was Justin Fields' first year. The second year, we had 6 games that we could actually play because of
the magic virus.
Yeah, the magic. You know what? And then Clemson's coach talked all that crap about us, how he didn't deserve to be there. And then we destroyed
weeks ago telling us that we should be.
Yeah, and then we destroyed them. And then like it seemed like we all thought that was our win, because it seemed like we lost all momentum playing Alabama, and we got demolished by Alabama. And I think everyone was just kind of like, well, we kicked Clemson's butt though. Like
yeah. That's that stuff I was talking about. It's like, no, like that's I mean, I guess it's cool. Yeah, at least you do that. It's better to do that than to lose to them, right? You know, but in the grand scheme of things, like you still look back and you're like, yeah, but I'm still salty about that because I wanted more. You know, like it.
Oh, definitely, man.
It's a consolation prize at that point.
It's nice to constantly be in the playoff, though.
It is nice.
The one year we weren't, we like it was like whatever. All of our starters didn't play, but it's like, hey, it sets us up great for the next year, which is when we beat Utah, and that's when it was kind of like the coming out party for like Marvin Harrison Jr.
I think
so. Oh, go ahead, Tyler, and then I'm going to go into the schedule for this week real quick.
Ohio State has like we say, like this playoff system has obviously there's a lot of subjectivity to it, as it's supposed to be objective, whatever. I think Ohio State has like earned themselves like the graces like of like the commit every year, like they're that one non-SEC team that's always going to get like a nod. Like you're like they're always going to be like until they play themselves out of contention. Yeah, they're always going to be like get a nod from the committee. Like, okay, like you've been here before, and you're probably going to keep being here. You know what I mean? Like, You know what I
Even
mean?
when Chad and I first became friends, he said to me, I mean, who's really good in the Big Ten besides Ohio State?
Nobody,
Well,
bro. Nobody.
that's a really nice thing to say. Thanks, Chad.
I
Usually you guys
mean, hey, look,
Listen,
it is what it
we're
is.
SEC fans. We're not stupid. We understand. Like
Yeah.
we respect talent, even if that
Yeah.
talent is not within the SEC. We said this podcast is called the South Endzone. You know why? Because every stadium has one.
That's right. Because
Doesn't
they
matter where.
go. They don't go east to west. They go north to south.
Exactly.
Because it would be really difficult in those day games if they did go east to west. Somebody would be staring the sun down directly, and somebody else would be. Anyway, all right. So real quick, I just want to run down because I talked about it earlier that some intriguing matchups this week that could be some stumbling blocks for some of these teams. I mean, I don't know. Rutgers, should y'all really have any trouble? Probably
No.
not. But I mean, they
Hey,
are.
First time they've been
Gianna's
bowl
going
eligible.
bowling, baby.
They've won,
Gianna's
yeah, they're
going
bowl
bowling.
eligible. They've won 3 games in the Big Ten. You never count anything out. You have to go to New Jersey to play this one. You know,
Ooh.
We're taking it seriously. We'll see.
Yeah.
I'll see I'm sure I can predict what everyone's going to say tonight. I'm more interested to hear Travion Henderson get interviewed more about his cheap shot he received from Notre Dame that he kind of like. He said on NBC, and there were so many rumors behind why he wasn't playing, and so I'm more interested in that. But I think we steamroll them. I mean, it's not going to look pretty on offense, but our defense is going to shut them down, and we'll still score enough points.
So a pretty good Kansas State team goes to Austin to take on Texas. That's Texas still has. This is where I'm looking at like how the landscape can start to change because we know how this always happens. Every year they announce the college football playoff thing. Everybody starts to make their predictions, and then all those predictions get blown out of the water because some crazy stuff starts happening the last 4 or 5 weeks of the season that no one expected. And this is one of those opportunities for something like that to happen. I think the same thing about Texas A&M going to Ole Miss. They're playing in Oxford, but it's an 11 a.m. Central Time start. That's like Ole Miss is similar to LSU. Like the people like to get drunk. It's hard to get too drunk by 11 a.m. Like give us credit in the South.
Attitude.
We do our best, but it's still early. Like it's
you need to
just
spend more
starting to
time
get.
in Columbus, Ohio. Everyone's wasted by.
I was gonna say not with that attitude.
I promise, bud. You got to go to the cold weather states for that shit.
Penn State gets it done
We're
at
used
6
to
a.m.
playing.
too.
Yeah, we're used to playing night games, so we fired up. We fired up.
Hey,
a
listen.
little later, I guess.
Credit where credit is due. I was at 2019 Penn State, Michigan, and it was a night game, and we were up at 8 a.m. getting going. So
nice.
People start early.
So
I credit where credit is due. That's all I'm saying. But
that's
yeah,
right. That's
Blue
right.
collar. Yeah.
Nighttime in in Death Valley is different.
Yeah, Notre Dame travels to Clemson. It's not your grandfather's Clemson team, or well, maybe it is your grandfather's Clemson team. It's not your father's Clemson team or your older cousin's Clemson team. It's not Clemson from 4 or 5 years ago, right? It's different, but it's still Dabo Swinney getting a chance to play, even though it's an 11 a.m. start or noon on the East Coast. It's a noon start. It's ABC Prime. It's their big game for the day games. I still give Dabo some credit that he's going to find a way to get his team up, similar to what they did against Florida State. Very outmatched, but that was a close game. They could have won that game.
They could have.
God bless that kicker that they pulled out of the library. He just couldn't get it done. But similar situation, I think, with this Clemson Notre Dame game, where Notre Dame better not sleepwalk through that one, otherwise they're gonna end up disappointed. Not a whole lot else until you get to Missouri, Georgia, which I think is one of the big ones this weekend.
Mm-hmm.
It's not the biggest one. We all know it is. We'll get to that in a second.
Is that the first ranked team Georgia's playing?
It's not the first ranked team.
No, it's not.
We played Kentucky and then we beat the
was.
Oh yeah, they dominated.
Yeah, and then they came down to Athens and realized
now they're no longer
we're still a basketball school.
Yeah.
I forgot about the.
Now Kentucky's not ranked anymore, so but they were ranked.
I think Georgia probably routes Missouri in a similar fashion, man.
I don't know, man. Listen,
I'm happy after Florida.
Teams aren't that good.
I'm happy after Florida. Everybody's like, oh, Brock Bowers. I was like, well, we still have plenty of other good receivers. It's just, you have a guy like Marvin Harrison, a guy like Brock Bowers. You throw the ball to Marvin Harrison 15 times compared to your other receivers.
Listen.
You know, Brock Bowers goes down. You spread the ball around a little bit more. The offense looked
Might
good
be a lot
against
better.
Florida.
I'm
Yeah,
just
we looked
I'm
good
just gonna
against Florida
say
last weekend.
I'm just gonna say that underestimate Missouri at your own risk.
We're not gonna because Luther Burden is that guy.
Beck Schrader and Luther Burden are like legit. Like they are legit weapons. And
I don't see Georgia's coach underestimating anybody.
No, that's what I love about Kirby Smart is because he doesn't. Like he will treat any like we gave up points to UT Martin and he was losing his mind.
Mm-hmm.
Or you know what I mean? It's I think that he is the best at keeping us even keel. When Tennessee became #1 last year and came down to Athens, we showed him how it's done. You know what I mean? I think he is so good. And I think it's because of him being from the Saban coaching tree is that you are never your shit never, you know what I mean? Everybody
you go out there to dominate.
You go out there to get it done. Doesn't matter who, and you take it serious.
Yeah. So Florida State better not lose to Pittsburgh because that would be embarrassing. But it is a road game.
A dangerous team. It's in Pittsburgh. It's going to be cold as hell in Pittsburgh. That's a tough game for those South players to play in, man.
Yeah. Then Bedlam, you got Oklahoma State. That's always a crazy one. I would not be surprised at all if
that's in Stillwater too.
Somehow Mike Gundy gets it done at home.
I could take Oklahoma State. I think Oklahoma's only ranked super high because they beat Texas.
Yeah, I mean they're only a 6-point favorite on the road, and that's a Oklahoma State team that lost to South Alabama.
South Alabama, they put up no points,
31-7. They got a boat race by South Alabama. But it's still Oklahoma State. It's still a crazy rivalry, and they've got a running back that is already over 1,000 yards and 10 touchdowns this year. So, Oklahoma, Brett Venables is going to have his work cut out for him. Penn State, Maryland, I don't know. I feel like we're in Penn State death spiral mode right now.
Maybe Maryland's on a downswing, dude.
Yeah, Maryland hasn't played the same since OSU took their soul.
Right, but is Penn State going to play the same since?
Yeah, OSU might take their soul too.
Is that in College Park or is that in Happy Valley? Oh, that's in College Park. Listen, College Park
at home. Yeah, they're very good.
Yes, College Park is a sneaky. Like when teams like Penn State, Ohio State, Michigan comes to town, they actually show up. Anywhere else, it's like the stadium's kind of empty.
Yeah.
But they might wear all black for this game. They might, they'll do something cool. Like College Park, when a team like this comes to town, is a place to play.
I agree with Tyler.
Yeah.
Virginia Tech shouldn't be able to hang with
Louisville's at home. I think they stopped them.
At home. It's good. Yeah, they should be good. Tulane, I think should be fine against East Carolina. They're only 1-7. Cal has been sneaking up on people, but they're playing in Eugene, so I still like Oregon there.
I think Oregon's probably the most legit team in the Pac-12, even though
I think so too. Which is crazy because that loss to Washington's going to haunt them because if they win that game, they are a legitimate national championship contender in my opinion because I think they have a better defense and Bo Nix has this playmaking ability, but that was one that they desperately needed to get it done, and that one's going to haunt them because I don't think they can climb their way back. There's too many teams that are good ahead of them who can continue to improve their resumes. That I think Oregon is going to be on the outside looking in, even if they went out.
I just realized what week it is on the schedule, Chad. How did I not know this going into this podcast that LSU is playing Alabama?
He was talking about it last week when they had the bye. He was trying to jump ahead. I was like,
that's all we care about. This is once you get through the first part of the season, when you get to the bye week, it's just about prep for Alabama. So, all right. So Kansas, Iowa State. Potential letdown moment there. Iowa State, good defense. And
it's in Iowa. Ooh, it's going to be cold in Iowa.
Yeah. It's only, it's like 50 degrees or whatever. So I don't know how cold it's going to be this weekend, but Michigan should beat Purdue because they're
stealing
another crappy team on their schedule.
Is Purdue that upset team this year, or are they just not
only at home,
guys?
No.
Yeah, because I know they tend to sneak one here and there.
I think USC upsets Washington.
I was going to say yes. All right, thank you for saying that because I was about to say let's go through and look at the last 3 weeks for Washington. So, was it Arizona?
Barely beat Arizona State.
They barely beat Arizona. They barely beat Arizona State. Michael Penix Jr. or whatever the third or however many
Who cares?
Michael Penixes there are. Anyway, he had 0 touchdowns in both those 2 games against the Arizona team. They really kind of struggled against Stanford and let Stanford get back into it after they had started to pull away. I'm not sold on this Washington team. I may be wrong, but like I could see if it was them like rising to the occasion against the big teams and really dominating, and then just kind of having some letdown where they let lesser teams hang around. But like USC, their defense is terrible, but I've seen enough from Washington to see that their offense, even with Penix, can be like inconsistent when you get a little bit of pressure on them. And that's one thing USC does well, is they do get after the quarterback. If they can stir up some trash in Penix's feet and get in his face a little bit and make him like not completely settled in, they can put up enough numbers with Caleb
What's
Williams.
the line?
The line is 3.
3.
That's
I
crazy.
just don't like that we have to trust a USC defense.
I know,
Like,
right?
That's,
Yeah,
that's like
I
the
think-
opposite. Like they couldn't stop Cal. They let Cal put up 50.
I think
But
Tyler-
Washington couldn't stop Cal either.
Yeah.
Gave up, or Washington gave up 33 to Cal last week.
I think Caleb Williams wants this game,
think so,
especially
too.
since Michael Penix, whatever,
It is junior,
stealing-
by the way. Yeah.
he's stealing his shine in the
Yeah.
Pac-12. I think Caleb Williams is going to actually come out, want this game. I think USC wins.
Dude,
It's at home too.
all I gotta say is if Oregon beats Washington, Oregon's the far and away number 4 team in this playoff ranking.
Oh,
Definitely.
easily.
Like no, like there's not even a
Yeah,
there's not
Washington
even a
being
doubt in
number
our
5.
minds about it.
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
also Bo Nix 0-4 against Georgia.
And not for nothing, but like Washington was this close to losing to Arizona State 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
yeah, I know.
They had a pick 6 that was like 87 yards when Arizona State's about to score, and it was a terrible throw. I don't know what this kid was thinking, but he just turns and just like lets it go blind, and it all the way.
Here's
And that's how they won 15-7. That was the one touchdown Washington scored in that game. It was a 9-7 game before that.
I got USC on
Mhm.
Washington for sure. If I still gambled, I'd get bet on them.
Yeah. So LSU-Alabama. This is the
In
big,
Tuscaloosa.
yeah, UCLA, Arizona,
Ooh.
Oregon State, Colorado. I don't care. Maybe Dion gets it done for their, and I don't know if
Doubt
they can
it.
get bowl eligible, but I doubt it. But LSU-Alabama, that's the one I've had my crosshairs dialed in on. This game started off with Alabama as I think a 6.5 or 5.5 point favorite. It's down to 3. It's all going to come down to, can Alabama get enough stops against LSU's elite offense, and can LSU execute against a really good Alabama defense? But I think what they've done against some of the defenses they've done it against shows that they can. The biggest key, I think, is going to be that dynamic between Alabama being able to get enough stops or maybe turnovers against LSU's offense, and can LSU stop Alabama enough times to let the offense, run away from Alabama, because LSU's had some real trouble on the back end. Jalen Milroe, when he gets time to throw and can find a guy, he's going to take his shots deep. Can they do it? LSU's missing like all 4 of their transfer DBs. Deuce Chestnut from Syracuse, J.K. Johnson. Did he come from Ohio State? Is that right?
I don't know.
2 or 3 guys last year? I don't remember.
Doesn't sound right.
But anyway, Zy Alexander and Denver Harris. Denver Harris was a 5-star, came over from A&M, and then Zy Alexander was one of those guys that I was talking about that came from like nowhere, like Southeastern, very low level school, like a 2-3 star kind of guy. But he was starting, and he's out, hurt his ankle in the Army game on an interception that he shouldn't have returned. He should have just taken a knee. But we're also
JK,
without.
he did come from Ohio State, FYI.
Yeah. Okay. I thought so.
JK. Yeah.
Yeah. So
One of the lost souls.
yeah, but he got hurt in camp, so he hasn't played at all this year. But then we lost also Mekhi Wingo, who's like a major leader up the middle and one of our best defensive linemen. He's out for like 6 weeks, so he's going to be out for a while. And so it's just not a good time to have those kind of injuries going into the bye week and going into that game against Alabama. But neither of those guys are available. They're going to have to patch it together on the back end and then get some guys to step up. But I don't know. Like, I've seen enough from Jalen Milroe to know that, like, from a consistency standpoint, yeah, he can make some big plays. But you watch that first half against Tennessee and watch the second half against Arkansas a couple of weeks ago, and I think there's a real opportunity for LSU to actually, like, open this thing up on them.
That'd be pretty interesting for Saban's only 2 losses this season to be at home.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the biggest
so
thing for
nice.
me is seeing Alabama. Like, what's LSU? How many times has Saban lost to LSU at home?
So twice. Once in Baton Rouge and twice. No, a couple of times in Baton Rouge and more than a couple at so
okay. So
07 we beat them. Yeah, 07 we beat them there. 09 I think we beat them here. Then 2019 we beat them there. Last year we beat them here, and we beat them one other time there. 2011. That was the game. That was the game of the century. You know, we beat them 9-6 in Tuscaloosa. LSU actually historically has a better record in Tuscaloosa or Birmingham, whichever one it is that they play when they play in Alabama, than they do in Baton Rouge. It's wild, but that's just the way that it is. We went 20 years without winning in Baton Rouge. At one point,
I could see like this is an off year for Alabama. Clearly, I mean we were talking about it through text. I mean, the transfer portal's given a lot of guys an opportunity to get out of jail. And so I could definitely see LSU winning again. They won last year. Alabama, I mean, they need to win this game. So, I mean, I'm sure Nick Saban's going to be bringing his best what he can to. Yeah. I mean, I mean, I think LSU can beat them, but I don't know. Chad, what do you think? Do you think LSU is going to put it together? Or, I mean, you got a great offense, and Alabama really doesn't.
Yeah, I'll continue to put it the way that I put it a couple of weeks ago. Tyler remembers this. I'm not afraid of like losing this game. I'm not, looking at it like it's a loss that we need to somehow, convert into a win. I look at this like I'm going to be mad if we don't win this game. The only thing is I kind of, you don't get to do this, right? Like at the time, I was loving the fact that we beat them last year. Okay, yeah. So don't get it twisted. However, if I could go back and redo something, knowing that we shit the bed against the A&M in College Station at the end of the year last year, and that we got blown out in the SEC title game, I would go back and have Mason Taylor drop that 2-point conversion if I could, just because it would mean that we have a better chance of winning this weekend. Because I actually believe that. I actually think that this sets up very poorly in that one aspect, that revenge factor, and that Saban like having that bad taste in his mouth from last year. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look. I can't remember the last time we beat them back-to-back years. It's been a long time.
That's a tough feat, but if they do it, I mean,
that's awesome.
Yeah, that's pretty awesome, and that's a huge statement, especially in the SEC, but I think just in the national landscape. Like, Nick Saban's been the deal for so long, and then one of his guys kind of takes the throne from him at Georgia. You lose to LSU. They lost at home to Texas, which honestly, I mean, I don't.
After they should have lost to him last year, honestly.
No, that was a close game. I remember that. I don't know. I think LSU can win. I don't know if I'd bet on it.
Yeah.
Well, like I would USC over Washington, like personally. Like, I don't know if I feel that confident.
Bama could have lost the last 3 to 4 games they've played and didn't. Like, that's what I like Bama. Like, the fact that Bama is 6-1 right now is kind of like
it's scary.
The fact that like they've managed to stumble in most of their games and still be 6-1 is just
7-1.
7-1. Excuse me. 7-1. Give them one more. Why not? But I just think that it's very interesting. Like, they should have probably lost to Tennessee. Arkansas gave them a game. Ole Miss played the worst game of the season against Bama. Like that was like the most boring Ole Miss Bama matchup that I can remember in a while.
Yeah.
Honestly, this is not a typical Bama
A&M,
team.
if Jimbo Fisher has the balls to go for it on 4th and 1, like Texas A&M may have walked out of there with a win. But he punted, on the plus 45, on 4th and 1. It's like, bro, that's not how you beat Saban. Like you gotta actually try to win. Like that's why. Like shout out to Brian Kelly. He recognized it. Went for 2 in overtime. He's like, nah, we're not playing another overtime. We either win or lose right now.
Yeah,
I need 2 yards.
So
Let's get it.
When you have, Chad and I talk about it almost every other week, is that when you have a team like Alabama on the ropes, you got to get it done, or they're going to come right back in it. Like
you got to take a big swing. You got to take a big swing. You don't you don't let the bell ring and go back to your corner and let them get a breather. You knock them out right then and there. Yeah.
They don't give you many opportunities. So if you get any shot you get against them, you have to take it or you're done.
Well, gentlemen, we would love to have you guys back on again. This was a lot of fun. I really, really enjoy, and it's also good to get you guys' perspective on this, on the whole college football landscape, because a lot of times we tend to see things through the lenses of like either our teams or our conferences, and having because I think it's interesting to see how we see the other conferences that aren't the Big Ten and the SEC, because I think we see them a lot. A lot of similar ways, and so it's really kind of it's fun. I don't know, maybe it's just confirmation bias, but it does. It's like, all right, so we're not crazy, and we're not just
it's not the SEC sounding board over here.
We're not just SEC homers. We are seeing this stuff kind of clearly. And it's funny that
it'll be interesting to see with the 12-team playoff. With the first round is home games, right?
That's going to be on campus, right? That's
going to be,
All of a sudden, Jeremiah, the record of the conferences in the playoff is actually going to be like a thing. Like you're going to be able to see, like, okay, well, how does the Big 12 do in the playoff?
Terrible.
Because the Big 12 has generally done terribly in all this, but they do well in the bowl games though. But that's it's because they're like, it's their conference champion playing against like the number 3 team from the Big 10, the SEC or the ACC.
Yeah, the Big 12 playoff record is actually pretty embarrassing when you think about it. like the losses that they've suffered, even when we had to play Baker Mayfield at the Rose Bowl. Like that was like one of their best games, and they still didn't win, thank God. And I still sweat thinking about it. But you know what I mean? Like, it's Big 12 playoff record is pretty abysmal when you think about it.
Outside of TCU, and even they only went 1-1. So
they somehow beat. I mean, they beat a cheating Michigan.
Yeah, shout out to them for that. But no, this was great. We look forward to hopefully getting into this a little bit more as we get into Jeremiah gets to take the hat off finally.
Done with the hat.
He's only worn it for an hour and a half. We'll let him take it off now.
I thought this was an hour show. I'm like,
well, it was supposed to be, but Drew talks too much. No, I'm just joking.
I do talk too much.
We all do. That's the fun part.
This is a lot of fun. No, I enjoyed the conversation, enjoyed you guys' perspective, and I look forward to getting it again as we get closer to the playoff and even into the playoff and start digging into this stuff some more, because it's an SEC show, but we should
have a college before we play Michigan.
Yeah, there you go.
Me and Jeremiah shitting our pants that week because we don't know what's going to happen.
Let's do it. Let's do it before and after for that one. So that'll be great. That'll be a lot of fun. All right, man. We appreciate you guys. Don't forget, everybody, to like, to share, to subscribe. Again, share it with all your college football friends and family, fans of the sport and fans of the SEC especially. But even if you got this from Jeremiah or Drew and you're a big Ohio State or just a Big Ten fan, maybe you're a Michigan fan and you're a loser and you just like hearing your team slandered, share this with all your Michiganders as well, because they will enjoy getting slanders as well. And we appreciate you guys joining us. Be sure to join us again next time. For Tyler and for Drew and for Jeremiah, I am Chad. This is the South Endzone, and we're out. Peace, y'all.